Create with Fran Sydney. Hello everyone and welcome to the show. It's been a little bit of a long time without any shows because I had 2 weeks of holidays and I never really had the time to sit down and think about the podcast. So I want to apologize for just going missing completely, but I'm sure you've been very, very busy tackling the beginning of the year. So we are now in the 2022 and this is episode 75 and this is Fran Sydney. I am your host and today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic which is part of our self-reliance little series. So what we're going to talk about is how not all mental stress and depression and feeling low is a mental illness or a condition that needs antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication, because sometimes this can be just tackled by changing what's going on in our head by learning something new. And so I will be proposing some quotes from very important people and some studies to tell you how important it is to be a lifelong learner, and they will change all your life. Stay tuned. So to get started, I wanted to quote Howard Gardner, who said that if you think education is expensive, try estimating the cost of ignorance. Isn't that quite a thing to start with? It's like, wow, yeah, but I will not be talking just about university education. There is a lot more in life. And I will start with the NCBI website study from 2019, so just barely a couple of years old. And the study was called Education Improves Public Health and Promotes Health Equity. Obviously, we're not going to read the entire study, but really this is an article that gives evidence that it is very crucial to have education, because basic educational expertise and skills, which include knowledge and the ability to reason or to self-regulate emotionally, and our abilities to interact with others, are very important components of our health. And of course, we must agree of our well-being. And also they propose that education is a fundamental social determinant of health and actually an upstream cause of health. And that's a very interesting proposal, yeah? How is it possible? If you're more educated, you're going to have more health? Well, that's amazing. The researcher who did the study said that the educational programs made by governments that are able to close those gaps in educational outcomes between low-income or racial and ethnic minority populations and higher income or majority populations are needed to promote health equity. But do we actually need a program from the government, or can we start thinking with our head and think about what do we want from our life? Because, education is a process that lasts for all our life and is also a product of what we do. If you think about it, education, what does education mean? It really comes from Latin, from the word ducere, which means to lead. And so that leads to yield education and leading out or out from. And this really engages. The education is something that will engage our child from the day he was born, and it will give us knowledge. It will give us a skill, a way of reasoning or getting values or being aware of what is around us and interact in a specific way. And when we have education, a proper education, and I'm not talking about university education only, but all education, we can grow and become people who are engaged with others in our society, and that we can govern ourselves, control our appetites, be creative, be productive, be healthy. And because of that, we can also be more calm, more in control emotionally, and not as much in need of alcohol, drugs, or smoke, or anything, or whatever, to calm us down and to make us less anxious. Because when we have knowledge, we have fire. And education is not the concept of going to school and, the teacher is there filling the pot. It's really about lighting a fire, which is what W.B. Yeats said. Education is not the filling of a pot, but the lighting of a fire. So if you're not interested in that education, you're not going to receive it, and then you're not going to act on it. So when I talk about education, I'm talking about very intentional one. There's a vast difference between wanting to know something, having the interest, and not having it. Huge difference. So the article I'm talking about mentions that not all educational institutions achieve the goals that we mentioned. In fact, it's far from it, and they do say that educational institutions in the United States, where the article is prepared, very often fall short of the goals. And too many students may be led into school failure, social dysfunction, and marginal living conditions, with lifelong disadvantages. And this is where I just put a little stop on the study and just, suggested bullying and teachers with problems that cannot really address very overcrowded classes is one of the too many hundreds of problems that you can encounter when you're really trying to give education to people, but the environment is very challenging. So we're not criticizing the school, but I'm just saying that sometimes home education can be very useful for that. But remember that failing at school, and I will remind you of this, is not always a sign of poor environment or not having enough to eat or having a bad family or not being intelligent. Because if you look at people like Richard Branson, he struggled in school and he dropped out at age 16. And eventually he created Virgin Records. He had an idea about putting records on cassettes, on tapes, and then today he's worth over $3 billion, or maybe pounds. And, what's the difference? Just a lot of money. And how did he do that? Well, he was struggling, and then he had to use his brain to create something that he thought was going to fix a problem. And so he did. And look at that. That is not a school dropout problem, isn't it? So the article keeps saying that not all learning is acquired in a formal school setting, and the process of education really occurs at home, in the school, in the child's community, wherever we go. And they do say that there are many opportunities for informal education outside of a school setting. So I would add here, think about monuments that teach you history, museum, workshops, field trips. Think about nature trips. You can teach your children so much, just learning how to make things or repairing them. You know, when you see how things were done in the past, this is also how they can be done today if you take the time to realize that if we do not know history, we do not know how to make anything unless we go to China and have it done there, because we do not have warehouses anymore, because we're not teaching children how to do anything. We do a lot of paperwork, don't we? But education, I'll repeat it over and over, is not just about theory and books. It is a lot more. It's doing the things that we need to do so that our society can go ahead. And by learning one skill, we can have a much better mental condition, a mental wellness that we all aim for. I was just thinking about Jamie Oliver. He's dyslexic, and initially he left school when he was about 16. He didn't have any qualifications, but he worked his way up in the kitchen ladder, and he rose quickly to become a head chef, and look at where he is now. So don't tell yourself that you're not good enough because maybe you left school many years ago. There is so much we can do. There are people going to university or learning new things or NLP at age 60, 70, 80, so there is nothing that can stop you, only yourself. If you think about it, how do we learn? We learn by observing what is around us and by making conclusions and taking actions about things. The article that I'm talking about from the NCBI says that children in the United States spend a small proportion of their waking hours in school, about 1,000 hours per year. But when we talk about education is the knowledge and skills and capacity that do a lot more than just reading books. And that can be acquired by different way of learning. In comparison, the UK children approximately, in estimates, spend at least 2 hours a day online. So maybe let's assume the children in the United States spend 1,000 hours per year in school. How many of them are spent online? Maybe as much as the UK children estimates. That would be 730 hours per year. So if a child is spending 1,000 hours per year learning in school and 730 online, how can we use this to our advantage so that we can do something good with our learning instead of just wasting our day? It's something to consider when we are thinking, I hate school, I don't like what we're doing. But what are you doing online? Is there something there that can excite you, that can make you feel happier, that you maybe found your purpose or something that you're good at? So if you think about it, education is an attribute of you. And so although you have maybe a certain level of education in a certain particular moment, maybe at 20, you have your high school degree, high school diploma and nothing else, maybe at 30 you have a degree, but that's more, we have more. So we have an ever-evolving array of knowledge, of skills and capacity, and this changes throughout our life. Still commenting on the study, there are 3 sets that they talk about. They say that first of all, health is a prerequisite for education. So if you're always hungry, if you have like a chronic toothache, you can't really learn because you're so busy with other things, you're distracted. The second thing is education about health. So health education happens in many schools, and there are public health interventions that teach about that. And that is a real big central tool of public health. The third set we're talking about is a physical education in the schools, because that combines the education about how important physical activity is for your health, and they promote the activity. And so the researchers argue that the education, so the product and the personal attribute acquired, is both a critical component of a person's health, but also a contributing cause of other elements of this person's concurrent and future health. How is that possible? So this thing goes in cycles. The more you have, the more you get. The more health you will get, the more you can get education and knowledge, because you are able to pursue what you want. So it's interesting how they quote from multiple studies and statistics saying that when we reach a certain level of formal education, when we are young, this will affect our lifelong health through multiple pathways. We're going to talk about it very briefly. And they do add that education should be recognized as an essential requirement for the disruption of a cycle of poverty and inequities in health. So this is so important, right? If life is taking you to a point where you are poor and you can't get out of it, education is a big tool, and networking, and a very good spirit and good mindset to take you out of that. So consider that, If you look at a group of people that don't know what to do, they're 12 to 18 years old, after school there is nothing to do, they don't even maybe go to school anymore. They might form gangs and do what we do with gangs. But if they have this aspirational future that they can do something better, they can learn something, even if they cannot at that moment go to university, this will open up their mind to so much more. So let's give them this possibility. Let's give them workshops and ideas of what can they do, something that can inspire them and excite them. It could be music, it could be service, could be something good for them to get out of this cycle of poverty, which then can be very much connected to problems in life. And in the study, they say that education improves health because it increases effective agency. Think about this. Because it enhances a sense of personal control that will encourage and enable a healthy lifestyle. So the beneficial effects of education are pervasive, they're cumulative, they're self-amplifying, and they grow across the life course. So you think about a person that is very, very young, and everyone there is drinking and smoking and taking drugs, and they have nothing to do for the whole day. They can't cycle anywhere, they can't roller skate, they can't do any sports, no ball games here. They can't do anything. These people are stuck. And if we just leave them there and punish them and put them into prison, they're not going to get anywhere. But some people, when they're in prison, they start studying and realizing, and some people got law degrees and they come up with ideas of things to do. And do they have to get there to understand this? Why are we not there helping these people to get this education? I'm not saying about university, I'm just saying all education, so all inclusive, to help them to get out of this cycle where there's nothing else to do but destroying things. And the Leo Buscaglia said very, very clearly, change is the end result of all true learning. When we learn, we change, and that is amazing. I wanted to define, still using this study, these basic skills that we are talking about. So these researchers said that the basic skills are reading, writing, arithmetic, mathematics, listening and speaking. And pretty much most people in the Western world have those, right? But then not all of them. Some people cannot remember mathematics past the age of 20. So that's important to go through it again and say, could it be that I need to go back to my maths? I will be number one. I need to review that. Then we have thinking skills. So we have creative thinking, decision making, problem solving or seeing things in the mind's eye, knowing how to learn, knowing how to reason. Do we develop these skills? And if we're not doing that, why we're not doing it? And how can we learn about it? Ask yourself these questions. How can I think better? Because, if we think better, we will feel better. We will not fall into cycles of self-destructive behavior or self-loathing. Then we have things that are called personal qualities that we develop as we read and we learn about others. So we have responsibility, we have self-esteem, we have sociability, self-management, we have integrity and honesty. So we look at history, we look at people that inspire us. What did they do that make us feel so great? We want to be like them, we want to emulate them. So we learn this by education, by reading biographies, by going to a museum, by asking questions to the old people in our house. What happened here and there in the family. They will tell you what integrity is. We will learn from this experience. It's precious. So according to the researchers, when we develop those three skill sets, so the basic, the thinking, the personal qualities, then you are set to have a healthy life than you would have without having developed those skills. So the people who end up with drugs and abuse and everything, and they cannot get out of them, is because they are still needed to develop those skills to a higher level so they can learn to cope with all the bad stuff that happens in life without resorting to drugs, to killing, to violence, etc. And we do know there is a very good association between higher school achievement and lower rates of risk behavior. So you will have both strong values, you will have more knowledge, you will be avoiding risk, and basically when we develop these very, very good skills and we have this very good achievement, we can see that the problems that we would have are not coming as big. We can tackle these problems. So when we think about doing well at school, when it's possible, right? And studying with interest, studying what we want to study, learning what we need to learn, then you will see that the researchers got it right when they say wages and income are not health outcomes, but they're closely linked with health outcomes because they provide access to health-related resources such as healthy food, safe environment, and healthcare. So when you go to school, you start learning, I don't have to live like this. I don't have to, stay in an abusive family. I don't have to. I can go out. There is something else I can do. So what happens is when you get your education in whatever way, whatever umbrella you're getting for your education, this will give you a sense of control, a social standing as well, and a lot of social support because you can talk to people, you can reason with them, you can move on. And in the end, you will get better working conditions, you will get more resources, better networking, and a better income, hopefully, right? Because you know better, so people will come to you for help. You might get a better job. And then your knowledge of your health is better. I mean, how many people with a very, very good knowledge of health would go on drugs? Yes, I know there are doctors on drugs. I read the articles. But I'm saying, normally speaking, it's not people with degrees and with lots of knowledge because they know that in the long term, that it's not going to help. So when we read books, when we watch documentaries, when we ask people, when we educate ourselves, we're understanding of what to avoid to stay healthy, what to do to remain healthy. So what happens is we're reducing the stress related to all the stuff that we're paying for, as we said in the beginning. So the low-paid jobs, the lack of employment, the lack of resources, and also the fact that we're going to have a better housing situation, a better neighborhood. Our nutrition will be better, our health will be better because we consciously choose to do right because we know of the consequences. And that's so inspiring also to be with people who are doing the same. So the next time that you find yourself feeling overly stressed and frustrated, before reaching for the bottle, the pill, or just feeling like depressed and you're in a sinking hole, take some time to consider if maybe learning a new skill in a new way could change your situation. Maybe you're diabetic, and by learning a lot more about nutrition, about exercise, about lifestyle, you will feel more in control of your life. You can take some more action. Maybe you have a child or a spouse with special needs. You can educate yourself about this condition. You can lower your stress. You can plan better your days because you are more in control. Education is power. Maybe you're trying to stop emotional eating. And by learning the science behind the brain, behind the triggers, and how all this works. You can revert a lifelong pattern, or you can have therapy with me, of course. Or you might be frustrated because you are dyslexic, and so you think, well, I cannot really acquire an education because I'm dyslexic. Well, let's talk about this, because education and dyslexia, there's a big connection, right? There should be an entire episode about this, but just saying. It is not possible nowadays to say that because you are dyslexic, you cannot learn. I understand that maybe 50 years ago, when the teachers were not trained to understand what was going on, nobody knew what to do. It's just a different way of acquiring information. We're not stupid if you're dyslexic. We're just organizing information, understanding it in a different way. And I read lots of books about it, and it was fascinating to see how many people have got the dyslexia kind of framed in their day life in a different way, so they can actually use it. And lots of very famous creative people are dyslexic. For example, did you know that the actor Tom Cruise was diagnosed with dyslexia when he was just 7? But this didn't really stop him. He said that he would try to concentrate on what he was reading, he would get to the end of a page, and he would have very little memory of anything he'd read. But then he learned what to do with it, and he adopted very unique techniques. So he learned and learned, and when he became an actor, he learned his lines and went on to be a multi-award-winning Hollywood star. It wasn't just a looks, he actually made an effort there to educate himself, to try something, to get out of his problem, instead of sitting there being a victim and say, well, I'm dyslexic, I'm just never going to get a degree, never going to learn anything. Well, he learned what he needed to learn, and he went on to have success. So think about your problems sometimes as opportunities. Challenges are opportunities and invitations to grow. Think about Leonardo da Vinci. He was Italian, from Vinci in Tuscany, and he was dyslexic. But this didn't stop him. He became a wonderful painter, the Mona Lisa. He became very skilled in loads of areas. He was inventing things, he was doing sculptures, mathematics. He was amazing. He didn't really sit there and say, well, as I cannot read 2 lines in a row, I'm just going to sit here and be on benefit the rest of my life. He didn't do that. I think that's amazing. Think about Walt Disney. He was also dyslexic, but he used his very strong visual skills and created an entire empire. Picasso also could not read like all the other kids, but look at what he did. So I think the important thing with education is just to change your mindset and say, well, I'm going to be in charge of this. I'm going to take control of this. Another dyslexic person was Albert Einstein. You know who it is. He was one of the most influential physicists in all history, and he developed the laws of relativity. He shaped the ways that we think of the world today, and he developed one of his formulas and lots of other things. When he was not at school, he had time, lots of inventors did their invention and their thinking, their finding when there was a plague, when there were, the fires in London. They were stuck at home. There's no school. They had time to think. So it's not just about filling a beaker and filling a glass of water. You have to put what you want, and learn it. And it's not just about education as such. We know that there are 3 American presidents that are believed to be dyslexic. So John Kennedy, George Washington, and George W. Bush. And so think about how many people that have been helped, have been inspired, have been blessed, but all those people who went on to turn their issue into a productivity tool to help others. So we do not need to be stressed out the whole day thinking, I'm stuck in this. You can learn even if you're blind. There are braille books, there are audio things. Now we have the technology. There is no excuse, and we have online learning for everyone and loads of resources to learn. So lifelong learning is not only useful because all the reasons are quoted, but it will lead to improved health, to more happiness, to more balance, to more self-assurance. And this in turn will give you a calmer mind. So it could be anything. It could be a cookery course. It could be learning how to grow your food, or being a minimalist, how to, declutter the house. It could be something about the environment. You want to learn something about recycling and what to do with plastic, how to create a new type of fuel. It doesn't have to be huge. It could be small, eliminating the small problem you have. It could be a full degree, or it could be just modules. So what will you learn next? How will you get your mental health to optimal state? By learning something good, you might be helping someone else. And I want to close with a quote from B.B. King. He said, "The beautiful thing about learning is that nobody can take it away from you." So think about it next time you sit down thinking this is all wrong, I'm gonna be stuck here forever. You do have a choice. Thank you so much for being with me. It has been a very wonderful 25 minutes back together to chat about mental health and how to be happier and more productive members of our society. I welcome all your comments and any reviews you want to do, and click and share the episode if you think it's going to be useful for somebody else or inspiring. Please share it with your friends. Thank you so much. Take care and see you soon. Bye-bye. You have listened to Create with Fran Sidney.